Now, I have the privilege of teaching military students at Georgetown, and I had the sadness of laying a wreath at Arlington for one of our alumni just a few weeks ago. We have got to bring an end to this war. We have got to start bringing our troops home now and have them out within 18 months. We know that the problem in Iraq is a political problem. Our military are doing everything we ask of them. But what we need, as Senator Hagel has said, is a diplomatic surge in order to establish the political basis for a responsible withdrawal. We need to shift our attention to the real war on terrorism in Afghanistan, and we need to bring our resources at home. The Iraqis are having terrific profits on oil. They can pay for their own reconstruction. We need to bring the resources home and invest them here. And finally, as I said a minute ago, we have got to do well by the military we have asked to take care of us. That means get them the health care that they need. And again, support their education through Jim Webb's GI Bill for the 21st century. Thanks.
My opponent suggested that we need to be out of Iraq in 18 months. That's actually the very first time I have heard her specify a timeline. It happens to coincide with the timeline that I specified on April 9th when I wrote my paper on Iraq. We need to be out of Iraq, but we need to define our terms very precisely. What do we mean by be out of Iraq? I am one of two candidates in Northern Virginia, three if you include, Jim Moran also has signed the responsible plan to end the war in Iraq. I just got an endorsement yesterday by Brigadier General John Johns, a global counterterrorism expert. I just got an endorsement today by four-star Marine General and former Central Command Commander Joseph Hoare. They both endorsed the responsible plan to end the war in Iraq. It's quite detailed. I won't go into it now. I will tell you that I wrote my recommendation for precisely what steps we need to take to phase in a multinational UN-sanctioned force in Iraq should the Iraqi government request that as we leave, but also specifically stating why we need to leave immediately as the war in Iraq is causing irreparable damage to our vital U.S. interests. It is essential in this debate on all of these issues that we specify precisely what we mean. How will we pull the troops out of Iraq? And I have been on record for some months now specifying precisely how we do that with benchmarks and with timelines, and I encourage you all to visit my website to see that. And also go visit and see the responsible plan to end the war in Iraq, which is an overarching and comprehensive way to fold us out of this nightmare in Iraq that we're in right now.
Well, Sam, I think that what the problem is that we haven't made that promise. And as I said earlier, the problem in Iraq is a political problem, not a military one. And so what we need to do is make very clear our commitment to get out in order to change that political situation. And then, as I said, engage in a diplomatic effort to help us get out responsibly with other nations in the region. And I have been very clear on my commitment to getting out in a time frame. And that is if we need to start getting them out now and get them out within 18 months, which would, if we start now, have them out by the end of '09. I think it's critical, and I've been very clear about that throughout the campaign so far. We need to do that.
I've been on record since March 9th that we need to have every American troop off Iraqi soil by 12/31/09. On March 11th of 2003, I did my first commentary for National Public Radio, which was the only one at the time that was criticizing the war, and I said, you can go and hear it on my website, but it said, basically, you people are crazy. This is Somalia on a grand scale. In the summer of '04, I wrote an article for Newsweek and said this war will cost us 3,000 to 5,000 dead, 3 to 5 years, and $1 trillion. Sadly, I underestimated. And I also wrote an article for Newsweek.com that summer that said we will end up with a functional three-state solution. It will either be 3 independent states or it will be a loose federation of 3 entities within an Iraqi border. That's where this is headed. We have 2 options right now in Iraq. We can leave under duress and visions of people hanging onto helicopter skids off the top of the embassy roof, or we can leave it at a time and place and in a manner of our own choosing in an orderly retrograde operation. I choose the latter. We have simply jammed the cork down on the bottle tighter. You do not go in and disrupt and upend a society that is 60% Shia, 20% Sunni, and 20% Kurd next to two of the largest and most egregious terrorist states on the planet and expect this kind of thing not to happen. Yes, it may melt down. It may actually do that. But we really don't know. It's already functionally balkanized. The Shia population in Iraq is not necessarily the Persian Shia population in Iran. What I can tell you without any question is this. Every single hour that we spend on the soil in Iraq, a predominantly Christian conventional army in an oil-rich Muslim country, we are doing irreparable damage to U.S. vital interests. Nothing that we do by pulling troops out, with or without Iraqi cooperation, with or without a multinational force, can be as bad and as dangerous to military readiness and military prestige as staying there one day longer than we have to. The definition of superpower is not one-dimensional military power. The definition, in fact, precisely, I lived here for 10 months, in Southwest Asia for 10 months. I flew over the Iraqi no-fly zone. I've been over there. I've seen the cultures. I know what resonates and what doesn't. And I can tell you that being a I have sat in the White House Situation Room more times than I can count with Anthony Lake and Madeleine Albright, and I have talked to them and listened to them craft foreign policy, and I will tell you that if you go into any kind of a situation in international diplomacy and foreign policy with an attitude that military, being a superpower, is defined as military power projected with or without the consent of the indigenous populations, that is so one-dimensional and so limited in scope. Being a superpower means withdrawing U.S. troops so you are not one of the antagonists and devoting enormous amounts of resources to forging a UN-sanctioned multinational coalition to build roads and hospitals and schools and an infrastructure in Iraq, because that's what feeds the insurgency. If we can do that, if we can take that away from the radicals in Iraq, we can stabilize Iraq into roughly a three-state solution for decades. But if we continue to do what we do, which is build large military bases right smack in the most dangerous area of the world, our presence there has created an alliance between Syria, Iran, and Hezbollah. That's unheard of 10 years ago. And that threatens the state of Israel, just because we're there. Being a superpower means using your brain cells and your brain bites to figure out a better way to do things, to tackle the complex issues in a complex and nuanced way. Not to simply sit back and hold your breath until you turn blue and pull out your cap pistol and say, we're going to shoot you if you don't do it our way, which is the way we've been doing it for the last 8 years. There is a better way to do it, and being a superpower means having the fortitude and the prescience to sit down and figure out a better, more civilized way to answer the problems that the world demands that we answer. Judy.
What a premise. What a premise. You think I think that our presence in Iraq is doing so much more harm than good, that the sooner we are able responsibly to dismantle it, the better off we are. We, as a leader in the world, need to have strong military, and we know that this war has depleted our military. It's taken us backwards. It's taken us away from being able to address the real threat to terrorism. So what we need to do is restore not only our military, but our leadership on a broader scale in terms of our diplomacy, for heaven's sake. Being a superpower ideally means you don't have to use that military, and you certainly don't use it in the way we have, aggressively and unilaterally, in a way that does more harm than good. I am very proud of our nation and our capacity to bring leadership to the world, but not unless we change the leaders who have gotten us into this awful situation. The leaders in the White House, the leaders we need to have more Democrats and good, strong advocates of solutions that work and of humanity and civility around the world. I'm looking to be that leader and to bring change to our international scene as well as to address all our domestic problems.